I'm so excited to talk to you. I know that we're all going to learn a lot, and I want to jump right in. My mission in speaking to you today is to give somebody who is listening to your story and to all of the tools and strategies and insights that you are about to share about identifying a narcissist in your life and learning how to negotiate with them and keep your sanity and your power intact. What I want to understand is, after 20 years of litigating high net worth divorces and battling with narcissists day in and day out, can you explain how you now think about narcissism based on your experience for decades, your personal experience, and all of this extensive research that you've now done on narcissism? How do you think about the definition of a narcissist?
So a narcissist is not what you think. A narcissist is not a person who thinks so highly of themselves. It is a person who absolutely has no feeling of value internally about themselves, no feeling of value. So they have to get all of their feeling of value from external sources, which is image, mostly things related to image, which is the prestigious friends, the big houses, the money, the big cars, all of that, degrading people, devaluing people, manipulating people, and pushing people down in order to make themselves feel better. But it's an endless amount that they need because they can never get enough. It's completely scarcity based. It's fear based. It's all of that. So, and you're left feeling totally and completely empty, and that yet they're still starving because they can never get enough.
Rebecca, just listening to you, I just exhaled. Having dealt with narcissists in my life, I mean, it's exhausting. You do feel alone. You feel empty, because if you've ever had that experience where you're like, am I going crazy? Like, why is this person always making me feel like I'm the problem? And then they still want more no matter what you do. Mm-hmm. We're going to get into how narcissism is formed. This is fascinating stuff that you need to know. You are absolutely going to learn all of the things that Rebecca's going to teach you, the words that you should say that diffuse a narcissist, her 4-step plan that will help you get what you want, even if you're dealing with a narcissist in your life. But before we go there, could you just tell the person listening what's available to them? Because I think you get so beaten down when you're dealing with narcissism in your life that you do believe you're the problem. You do believe that something's wrong with you. And if you're listening to my words and you're feeling used and exhausted or scared, Rebecca, I want you to explain to the person listening, what could their life look like? Where could their life be if they take the time to learn the tools and the strategies that you're about to teach them so that you can keep your sanity intact? You can stand up to the narcissist in your life when it's important to do so, and so that you don't get so sucked in to the way that they go about life. Because I think that's part of the problem, is that their strategies work, which is why we get so turned around.
I want to start with you standing in your authentic power. And I love the concept of the Wizard of Oz. And I want to start with that because I just think it's so beautiful, which is that the wizard is really the narcissist in a way, which is this big head. He pretends like he's something that he's not. And he's actually this feeble little man who's afraid, right? And that's really what a narcissist is. And to me, you're like Dorothy, who's trying to find yourself. You're trying to figure out who you actually are. And what you're really trying to get to is Glinda, who knows who she is the whole time. And to me, she's sort of like your soul. There's a very subtle part of the movie, which is where Glinda is talking to the gang, and the Wicked Witch comes around, and she flies near Glinda. I don't know if you remember where she says to the Wicked Witch, "Go away, you have no power here." Do you remember that?
Yes.
That's where you're going. That's where you're going. That's that authentic power. When you can stand in your authentic power, to me, it's aligned with source. When you are aligned with source, you know who you are and you are in your purpose. What people need to know is like, once you know who you truly are, you know, you stand in your authentic power, and then that's the narcissist is like, go away, you have no power here.
Ooh, I love that. Don't you love that? That idea that you could stand in your power and be like, go away, little narcissist. And that's exactly what's happened to me. I have somebody who is very narcissistic in my life. I am not getting them out of my life, but everything you're about to learn has helped me stand in my power so they have no power over me. And that's exactly what you're going to get out of this conversation today. So that's incredible. Thank you for taking the time to explain that, Rebecca. And now that we know where we're going and what's available to you to be able to stand in your full power and be like, bye-bye, narcissist, I want to start with this. So, Rebecca, you've spent 20 years as one of the top-ranked lawyers, literally battling, negotiating, litigating with narcissists. You have written 3 books on the subject. You have studied this so that you can win. And you have identified that there are 3 different types of narcissists. And for you listening, this is a really important place for us to start because awareness is critical to changing anything for the better. And when you know that there are 3 different types, it's much easier to spot. And then you know what? You're going to be able to stand in your power and use the strategies and not get hooked into this. So, Rebecca, let's talk about the 3 types of narcissists that you've been researching.
Well, the 3 most common ones that you hear about are the covert, grandiose, and malignant. And there's other types of narcissists, and there's even a healthy narcissism as well. But so I want to make sure that I'm clear on that. You know, it's not that those are the only types. Well, let me start with the grandiose, which is the type that I just sort of described, which is the one that everybody normally thinks of as a narcissist. It's the one that's sort of in your face, the one that's, you know, bragging about themselves, the one that is more impulsive. The grandiose is the one that everybody thinks of as a narcissist. I kind of think of it as your garden variety narcissist. And to me, they're the easiest ones to spot. So the covert narcissist is the one that to me, in some ways, is the stealthiest, in some ways is the more dangerous, because they're the ones that are, you know, passive aggressive. They'll, you know, they're your humanitarians. They're the oftentimes clergy, oftentimes doctors, lawyers, you know, everybody thinks they're so nice. Everybody thinks they're so wonderful. Many times they present themselves as victims. Oh my gosh, you know, life isn't fair. And so everybody rushes to take care of them. Or, you know, they're the ones who agree to do things in your face. Oh, yes, of course I'll do that, but then they don't. Or, you know, they take credit for your work. It's like this underlying rage. There's just like right underneath the surface, there's this rage and jealousy that only you sort of see, but everybody else thinks that they're so nice and so wonderful. But you are just constantly subjected to this underlying sort of thing, and you can't really quite put your finger on it, but you just know that there's always sort of this something, these little comments, these little jabs. Oh, what's the name of your book again? I can never quite remember. Or, you know, like things like that. Or, oh, I'm so happy for you. Oh, that's so nice. You know, but when you go to tell somebody about it, it's not quite enough for people to go, oh, okay. You know, most people think, oh, I'm sure that was inadvertent. Oh, well, she's so nice. I can't imagine that they really meant that. You know, I mean, but you just know that taken together as a whole collectively, it's just, you feel like you're going crazy.
Can you give us an example? Give us an example, because you actually dealt with one, because I'm sitting here trying to rack my brain. Okay. Do I know a covert passive-aggressive narcissist? What am I looking for?
Absolutely. So they will start seeding their smearing, for example, in a divorce maybe 6 months prior. So here's a way that they'll do that. They might start to say, I am so concerned about Johnny and his drinking. I'm just so concerned about him. So they couch their concern in, they're smearing in terms of concern. Just so worried. I'm so worried about him. Like that, to a neighbor or to a friend. I'm just so concerned. And so they start this down, early on. And then by the time the divorce actually happens, then, Johnny has a full-blown drinking problem. Well, I've been talking to you about this for months. Well, you'll testify for me against him, in the divorce for custody now, won't you? I mean, I've been telling you for months he's got a drinking problem. Now, he probably has no problem with drinking whatsoever, but, they've been laying this foundation about, concern and care. And they do it in such a way that is so plausible and so they seem like they're such a good person. They're like little things like an email chain that you get left off of, and all of a sudden you're not in a meeting that you should have been on. And there they are on an important meeting for work. And, clients are like, oh, how come you weren't on that meeting? And you're like, well, I didn't get I really thought you were, I don't know how I missed you being on that email chain. I really thought you were on that. Sorry. Taking credit for your work, seeing people on particular interviews and using your own quotes, that very clearly are yours, and, that sort of thing.
Let's go to the third one. So you said there's the grandiose, the covert, passive-aggressive narcissist. What was the third?
Malignant narcissists tend to just be, they're the ones that have no problem just completely ruining your life. This is the one that will honestly just accuse you of being a child molester and you've never touched a child whatsoever. This is the one that will stalk you. They will threaten you. They violence. And by the way, there can be combinations of the types of narcissists as well.
That's kind of scary. But let's keep going. And here's where I want our conversation to go next. One thing that changed my life forever when it comes to narcissism is understanding the origin of narcissism in somebody, because we throw the word around and you may believe that somebody just chooses to be a narcissist. That's not what happens. And Rebecca, you decided to dig into the psychology. And what I love about how you've researched this topic is you thought about it like a lawyer. And lawyers dig into the cases, they dig into the evidence, they dig into the precedent. And you wanted to learn about the psychology of narcissism and where it begins and how it affects somebody's ability to think, how it affects their emotions, because that's critical to you being a badass in the courtroom. And so you dug into the topic of the psychology of a narcissist with the lens of, I got to know how to win. So I got to understand how somebody comes to be like this and how this impacts their emotions and their logic and their thinking, and what you discovered and how you explain it, I think is really cool. So let's go there now. When you were researching the psychology of origin, like how someone becomes narcissistic, and obviously this is a spectrum, what did you discover?
Yeah. So what I found out, and I found this to be really, really fascinating, is that it's a result of trauma. And what happens with the brain when we are exposed to trauma, we have a stress response. What happens to all of us is when we are in stress, it activates our sympathetic nervous system. So we go into fight or flight when that happens. And our brains release hormones, mostly adrenaline and cortisol when that happens. So as children, when that happens, and it happens on a regular basis or a continuous basis, it can actually cause arrested development in the limbic system part of a child's brain, in the part of the brain that is responsible for emotions, for the emotional regulation for a child. And so what happens is, as they grow, while the prefrontal cortex part of their brain can continue to develop, there can actually develop a lag between the prefrontal cortex, which is the reasoning part of the brain, the judgment part of the brain, and the emotional center part of the brain, which is the limbic system part of the brain. The first type of phrase is, it's the all about me phrase. You're in a conversation with them and everything is I this, I that. You're just, everything has to like swing back to them. Even if you're telling them a story, it's, I had that too. I had that too. I remember when I was like that. You can't even ever get to a conversation about you, even if they asked you about you, somehow it always swings back to them. And, I know it seems kind of obvious, but you really do feel like, wait a minute, this is so one-sided. I realize now that they never even ask about me, or if they do ask about me, it just they never really get to me. And, as an empath, you end up kind of in the relationship feeling like, I'm going to help them, I'm going to take care of them. Maybe I don't need that much for me. I'm good with, being the one who takes care of and pours love into. Or even if it's a work situation or a family situation, you end up pouring so much into a person and feeling like, I'm good with that. That actually fills my cup. It fills my cup to take care of other people. Right. But you end up after a while thinking, gosh, I would like to have some feeling of it being a little bit two-sided. And then you start to feel, oh, maybe I feel guilty if I feel like that. I mean, but don't feel guilty if you want to have some amount of a two-sided relationship every once in a while. Don't allow yourself that feeling of guilt. It should be two-sided. It should be a give and take relationship. That's what relationships are about. When it's all one-sided, if it's all always about the other person, that's one of the hallmarks of narcissism. And I know this because, I've seen this so often in, my practice. When I practiced law as a divorce attorney, I practiced at a very, very high level as a divorce attorney for many, many years. And I've also helped many thousands of people through my SLAY programs now. And I wrote a book, Slay the Bully, How to Negotiate with a Narcissist and Win, which ended up becoming a USA Today bestseller and a #1 bestseller on Amazon. And so I've seen this, in many, many arenas. And it's really, really crucial for all of you who are out there thinking, is this person a narcissist? For you to understand and see these red flags that scream narcissism. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel, make sure you do that now, so you never miss out on the empowering content that we offer here. The next thing is the victim phrase. And many narcissists, they're either like the hero that swoops in when somebody is in these situations and they become that hero, and then back off, and it's like, where did they go? Or they're the victim. They're always the victim. And oh, why does this always happen to me? And nobody understands what I'm going through. And they play this guilt card all the time. And that's a manipulation as well. It's a way to garner sympathy. It's a way to control the narrative. And they do this a lot of times so that public people will see this and play this sympathy card. And then it manipulates the target so that the target feels guilty and everybody else feels sorry for this person. And then the target is manipulated into doing more than they want to or should, because this person is, constantly making you feel guilty, right? Even though you're like now overdoing more than you probably should. And this person has like a learned helplessness, or, constantly playing the victim card for themselves. I guess I'll be here alone again. I never get what I want. And, here I am. And, so you're constantly, playing into them, but everybody else is, there's that underlying rage right underneath the surface, underlying rage, underlying competitiveness, underlying passive aggression right underneath the surface. So it's very much a covert narcissist trait, right? And by the way, if you're dealing with a narcissist, you should get the support and help that you need. Join my free private Facebook group, Narcissist Negotiators with Rebecca Zung. That will help you tremendously as well. And if you guys have seen any of these things, I would love to know. Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to know the kinds of things that you guys have seen, the kinds of phrases that you've seen. The next one is the invalidation phrase, the invalidation phrase. So, the way they'll invalidate you is invalidate your feelings. They'll say, like, you're too sensitive, you're reading too much into this, that didn't happen. And, it's a way to keep the spotlight on them, and they'll invalidate people in your life too. Oh, that person's a jerk. This person doesn't love you. I don't know what you see in them. If it's, it's just friends of yours, basically. It's a way to keep you in their lair. It's a way to keep you, so that you are fully isolated and with them, and with no one else around you. So, they don't want you to have any other support system other than them. And of course, they're not really a support system because they're not really for you. They're really only for them. So you have to make sure that you protect yourself emotionally and identify when you are being manipulated. Okay. The next one, number 4, is project and deflect phrases. This is when they are trying to avoid accountability. So this is, it's not my fault. I had no choice. That wasn't my responsibility. I would have done it, but that I was never supposed to do that. This is avoidance of responsibility. We never talked about that. You were supposed to do that first. There's, a variety of ways that they project and deflect. But basically, when you're trying to get them to be held accountable for something that they were supposed to do, or maybe it's something they didn't do, and did do and weren't supposed to, or didn't do and they were supposed to, whatever it was, there's always some reason for it. I was under a lot of stress that week. What I was dealing with, uh, you know, all these things. Why are you bringing that up now? Uh, You know, this is a terrible time to have this conversation. We can talk about this tomorrow. I'm too tired to have this conversation now. With all these people around, you know, you're raising your voice. I can't have a conversation when you're raising your voice. You just interrupted me. There's all these things to project and deflect or bring it back on you. And it's just a constant thing, right? So, and by the way, if you are dealing with a narcissist, you definitely want to check out my free phrases for disarming narcissists. And you can get those at disarmthenarc.com, disarmthenarc.com. And I'll drop a link to these free phrases for disarming narcissists in the description below as well. And I would love to know which of the types of phrases that I've mentioned so far resonates with you the most so far, too. Just drop a comment below. All right, the next one is the one up type of phrase, the one up, kind of the competitive one. And I've seen this so often. And even before I knew about narcissism, I've had friends like this. It's like, even the smallest of things, you're just trying to have a normal conversation. And no matter what it is, like you can just say, I had a cold or whatever. And this person had a worse cold than you that week, or whatever it is. Like, I sat in traffic and, oh, I had worse traffic. Like it's no matter what you say, it's there's this bigger, better, worse, more. I just like sort of shut down when those kinds of conversations happen. Yep, yours is worse. Yep, yours was, you get it. Uh-huh. Because I can't have that with me. Like it's, have it, you know, because it's so frustrating for me. And That's a classic sign of narcissism. The next one is the gaslighting phrase. Number 6 is the gaslighting phrase. This is just a complete where they're trying to make you think that you're crazy. So you're imagining things that never happened. It's it's a very, very powerful tool to question your sense of reality. So we talked about that and you agreed. Don't you remember? It's you looking at a text message that very clearly looks like somebody is having an inappropriate relationship and you're reading too much into it. It's very clearly meant to have you question your sense of reality. You are not seeing what you're seeing. You are not hearing what you're hearing. You didn't experience what you experienced, or you did. And, all of whatever it is, it's because, again, it's a form of projection and deflection, or what I call lying and denying. It's so that they don't have to take responsibility for something, but it's meant to make you think that you're crazy. Okay, so understanding this is so essential for you to maintain your mental clarity. And what you can do is just start to step back. And I say, step 1, don't run. Step 2, make a U-turn. Step 3, break free. You just step back. You can start to see them as a toddler having a tantrum on the floor, and start to see them as, the person that they are, and take that boundary, take a step back and say, okay, wait a minute. I can see them for who they are. And I can see that I'm the one who doesn't need to take this personally, and I can see that they're upset, and I can breathe, and I can take a moment and go, all right, I deserve respect, and just um, go, you know what? My step one is that I can make that step to say, no matter what, you need to treat me with respect. And then use those phrases for disarming narcissists. And, one of which is, we can have this conversation when you're ready to be calm. I can see that you're upset. I can see that you're angry. You're looking at the person as if you're a third party, right? Don't allow yourself to be triggered. You put that imaginary sort of transparent, invisible barrier around you, and then it's like Teflon. So number 7 is what I call conditional love and approval phrases. Conditional love and approval phrases. I'll only love you if, you're only valuable when. And this is, a very much, it's very much an emotional type of manipulation. It's a clear sign of narcissistic tendencies. And a lot of times you see this from a parent to a child, and it's a lot of times it's not communicated that maybe specifically, but it's more like, if you are really, really good at football, then I'll love you. Or if you're really, really good at academics, then you're valuable. That sort of thing, when you see it from a parent to a child, or even from a spouse to a spouse, you're only really valuable to me if you're making money or something like that. I mean, that's kind of a conditional love and approval sort of a thing too. So again, healthy boundaries, healthy communication, give and take. That is a healthy type of a relationship. The next one is the lack of empathy phrase. This is the last one of the 8 phrases, the 8 types of phrases that scream narcissism. So this is the I don't care how you feel. It's a blatant lack of empathy, a fundamental trait of a narcissistic behavior. Understanding this lack of empathy is crucial for protecting your emotional well-being and maintaining healthy relationships. So these are the 8 phrases that scream narcissism. I want you to know that every single one of us possesses the ability to have that power, that knowledge to do whatever you want to do to shape yourself, to shape the next phase of your life. Part of the way that you can do that is to be able to decode the language that narcissists use and really be able to recognize that on the spot. And that's what we're going to be doing today so that you can enlighten yourself. Today, we're diving deeper, even deeper, with 5 narcissism code words you need to know. Recognizing these phrases can reshape the way that you review relationships, whether they're professional, whether they're personal, family, neighbor, doesn't matter. It helps to protect you, put that bubble around you, protect your mental, spiritual, physical, emotional well-being. So code word number 1 is, I didn't mean it that way. Yeah, you're just taking it wrong, right? I didn't mean it that way. So this phrase is often a method of evading accountability. That's what they love to do. They're like slippery eels, right? They use this to imply that you are misinterpreting their intent, thereby putting that blame back onto you. So, for example, if a partner belittles you, belittles your job, and tells you, I didn't mean it that way, they're dismissing your feelings. It's a way of dismissing your feelings, devaluing your feelings, making you feel like whatever it is that you felt wasn't real. And that's not okay. If a colleague takes credit for your work, oh, I didn't mean it that way. I thought we were just collaborating. Again, It just makes you feel like whatever it was that you felt, you shouldn't be feeling that way. So I didn't mean it that way. That's number one, code word number one. Word number two is you're too sensitive. You're too sensitive. They say this all the time. This is so manipulative. It is, again, designed to trivialize your feelings. By labeling you as you're too sensitive, it is meant to invalidate you, invalidate your reactions, making it seem like you're the one who has the problems. I remember that there was somebody that I knew that would, say the worst, most horrible things, and then they'd slap the word "ha" on the end of that sentence. Oh, you're just the worst thing. Ha, and that was supposed to take it all away. Again, they're trying to make it seem like you're the problem, not their actions are the problem. Not okay. And if you agree with me that that is not okay, give me not okay in the comments. And by the way, if you need additional support, make sure you join my free private Facebook group, Narcissist Negotiators with Rebecca Zung. Get the help and support that you need. And if you want free phrases for disarming narcissists, make sure you get my free phrases for disarming narcissists at disarmthenarc.com. So important, disarmthenarc.com. Free phrases. You can use them for text, emails, whatever it is that you need, disarmthenarc.com. Next one that you're going to need that that you probably have heard is, I'm only joking. I was only joking. Again, humor used as a shield against accountability. It's an attempt to paint the person as on the receiving end as lacking a sense of humor. I remember somebody actually, tried to call me a narcissist and then say, oh, it was my attempt at humor, and thereby diverting attention or an attempt away from saying something that was extremely hurtful and very, very hurtful actions or remarks. It's not okay if a coworker makes a derogatory comment about your appearance. Oh my goodness. That's, again, something really, really hurtful. I've actually heard somebody say, oh, that person's not eating it today, because they're on a diet. Oh, just kidding, just kidding. And they're actually saying this in a group setting in front of people, and they might actually be really very sensitive about their weight. That's really, really embarrassing to somebody, can be really harmful, very shameful, about embarrassing for them. Not okay. And if they shrug it off and just say, oh, it was just a joke, it was just a joke, that is so hurtful. It can be really, really hurtful, and it can cause pain to somebody for a very, very long time. It can cause a deep amount of trauma to somebody, and you really don't know what a person is dealing with. So this is just awful. The next one that is a code word is, it's for your own good. It's for your own good. This is a covert way of justifying or controlling unsolicited behavior. And they make it seem like this is a very, very covert narcissist thing to do. Oh, I'm just trying to help. I'm so concerned. This is something that covert narcissists do all the time. They couch their narcissism in concern, and they act as if they're in the person's best interests. And this is how they smear people too. In reality, they're really just smearing, or if they're talking directly to the person, they're just being narcissists, and it's a way of putting people down. I don't really like that dress, or it doesn't really look the best on you. Or they're just trying to discourage people from hanging out with other people. Oh, they're really not the best crowd for you. They're really just trying to isolate you. They're trying to push you into a particular career path, and it's really just a way of discouraging you against your passions. That's so not okay. Point number 5, nobody else thinks that. This is very, very narcissistic. Again, it's that whole everybody else thinks this, nobody else thinks that. Narcissists try to isolate you, they try to devalue you, they try to make you feel like they're the only ones that might care about you, or that you should overly rely on them, or they're trying to marginalize your feelings, or they're trying to isolate you. By saying that nobody else thinks that, They're aiming to get you to doubt the legitimacy of your own feelings. It's a way of gaslighting you and trying to get you to think that you're crazy and get you to doubt what it is that you're thinking, or maybe get you to not believe your own senses a lot of times. So maybe you're thinking something happened at work, you're worried about how you're being perceived or something. Oh, nobody else thinks that. In a group of friends, you bring up an issue and you might consider your concerns. Well, nobody else thinks that. You're the only one who feels that way. These are ways that narcissists get to control you. By recognizing these code words and these patterns, you start to realize, hey, this is a person that's not supporting me. And again, I go back to, how do you feel after you've been with a person? Look at your gut. The heart actually is vibrationally ahead of the brain by 10 seconds. I don't know if you ever knew that. You actually know that something is off. You can just tell how you feel after you've been around this person. Trust your gut. Stop trying to make not your people your people.
Let's start out a little bit with the narcissist thing that you've been talking about lately is how to negotiate with a narcissist. But to me, when I hear narcissist, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there's degrees of narcissism in life, but it's also, for me, it's a lot of people listening to this are in different relationships, business relationships, personal relationships, and how to identify whether or not this person is toxic to you, or just detrimental to your life, or whether or not they're a benefit to your life. So what is narcissism to start out with, and are there varying degrees of it?
Yeah, I mean, to me, a narcissist is a person who has a very fragile sense of self. It's the person who is the absolute most insecure person in the world. They have no inner sense of value. So therefore, they have to get all of their sense of value from external sources, from either the, adulation, from prestige, from people giving them compliments, from all of the things that you think about when you think of that. But what I call the dark underbelly of that is that, that control, devaluing, debasing people, degrading people, that's the other side of that as well. So that's, the one side of that. And then, the other side of that is that they therefore have no ability to have any sense of compassion or care or empathy for other people. And that is because it's scarcity mentality to the extreme. If I give to anybody else, therefore I can't have, or I won't have. So that's really what a narcissist is, all the way to the end of the spectrum. And as you said, I do believe that all of us, to varying degrees, have some sense of that. We've all, had some feeling of insecurity at times. We all want to feel seen, heard, and know that we matter. That's part of being human.
Right.
And so, it's when it becomes pathological. It's when it becomes, that's the only way that you feel.
So brilliant. I want to stay on it because, listen, what's the most important things in our lives is obviously our sense of self. And we, like, as you said, people want to be seen and heard and felt, and they want to express themselves. They want to feel valued. That's healthy. That's okay. But right now, if you're listening to this or you're watching this, you may be in a relationship where you're like, is this the one? Or maybe you're even married and you're thinking, why are we not happier together? Maybe it's a business relationship that you have, people that work with you, for you, or are a boss of yours. And so I want to hone in on this idea that, because for me, I started to really, when reading about this, people start flashing. Well, yeah, that particular person in my life, man, they are so addicted to attention, so addicted to getting accolades and admiration externally, and will do almost anything to get it, even do things to their own detriment. So how do we distinguish between the unhealthy and the healthy? I want to ask you specifically about something. When I was kind of ranking people that I know, including myself on this spectrum, so to speak, because I think there's a point where now no longer is this person healthy in my life. They become toxic. There's a line there. And for me, the other sign of the aggressive narcissist, or the more severe one, is they also will never take responsibility for any of their behavior. They immediately make you think you're the crazy one. Well, what about you? And they constantly turn the frame and put it back on you. Everyone right now that knows someone like this is going, I know that person. Do you think that's where you distinguish the line that this person is unhealthy because they won't take any responsibility for this addictive behavior for attention and admiration and accolades? Is responsibility one of the quotients we should be looking at?
Well, I mean, I think there's a number of different types of lines, and I think it depends on the type of relationship that you're in with that person as well. I mean, is it a work relationship? Is it an intimate relationship? I think it really kind of depends. I mean, are you in a business relationship with this person? Is this person like in your finances? Are they in your space? I mean, or is it kind of a more of a casual relationship? I think it really kind of depends. How much control do they have over you? But if you are feeling where the hairs on the back of your neck are up, your gut reaction is not feeling good, you're feeling like this relationship is not working for you in some way. I mean, I know for me, I had a very minor business with a business relationship where I had gone into a business partnership with someone. Thank God it didn't go very far. And the business didn't really make any money, but it was enough that it absolutely made my life completely miserable. It was a covert narcissist. And, right from the beginning, I saw red flags, but I kind of ignored them because I was like, well, but this person seems so nice. But yet I knew that there were these flags, and I let them go. And I thought that I could overcompensate for them. And I thought that, well, there's these other things that seem good. And
Yeah,
I
exactly.
continued,
Yes.
and I ignored them because I thought that I could make up for them in other ways. And
Yes.
because I did that, I paid for it so dearly. And it ended up to be one of the absolute worst nightmares of my entire life. And most of the time with these people, from the beginning
Yeah.
that it's not good.
You said something in there, Rebecca. I just want to jump in and ask you about it because to me, you said such a great distinction between business and personal. Personal for me, one of the things I measure is how much of my energy am I using to have to feed this person's ego and prop them up? Right now, if you're in a relationship, friendship, personal, intimate relationship with somebody, measure it. How much of your energy, time, thinking goes to having to prop up their ego constantly, right? And how much energy are you expanding? And is it a never ending thing you're doing? You want to do that the rest of your life? Business sometimes, though, to your point, I'm locked in now and I may need to be dealing with them for a while. Maybe I do need to exit. But if you can't, you have to deal with someone who's got some form of narcissism. You have this thing you say that is so brilliant. I want if you'd cover two of them at once. One is slay, and the other one is sort of this related is this sort of how to ethically manipulate the manipulator.
Okay, so maybe you are dealing with a toxic boss, maybe it's a toxic colleague or whatever, but in this video, I really want to tackle those signs of a narcissistic boss because this is really one of the most horrible situations when you feel like you got to get up in the morning, you got to go in, and you just don't want to. I mean, you spend more time at work than probably anywhere else in your life. A lot of times we're sleeping, we go home at night, we spend a couple of hours before we have to go to bed, and then we got to get up and we got to do it all over again. If you're not happy at work because you have to deal with this person, it can really make your life miserable. So I want to go over the signs of narcissism at work, the signs of a narcissistic boss, so that you can spot this and then maybe start to figure out how you're going to start putting some boundaries in place, and maybe even start to create a plan for figure out if you're going to even stay in this particular situation, or maybe figure out if you're going to move on and find a different situation. All right. So obviously, narcissism at work, the signs of a narcissistic boss, so that you can spot this and then maybe start to figure out how you're going to start putting some boundaries in place, and maybe even start to create a plan for figure out if you're going to even stay in this particular situation, or maybe figure out if you're going to move on and find a different situation. All right. So obviously, narcissism at work, the signs of a narcissistic boss, so that you can spot this and then maybe start to figure out how you're going to start putting some boundaries in place, and maybe even start to create a plan for figure out if you're going to even stay in this particular situation, or maybe figure out if you're going to move on and find a different situation. All right. So obviously, narcissism at work, the signs of a narcissistic boss, so that you can spot this and then maybe start to figure out how you're going to start putting some boundaries in place, and maybe even start to create a plan for figure out if you're going to even stay in this particular situation, or maybe figure out if you're going to move on, to make themselves look better. They manipulate situations to be the center of attention and make sure that they are the center of attention. I know that, when I've had narcissistic bosses, which is why I haven't had a boss in a long time, because I've owned my own company for a long time. But, when I was in situations when I had bosses before, and it was, where they were taking credit for my work or other people's work in the company, that sort of thing, or, because they had to be the center of attention, I would write articles with people and they refused to put, my name on it, and it wasn't just me, it was, other people in the company, or you do good things for the company and they don't want to acknowledge that, or they play favorites with people in the company. They pit people against each other in the company, that sort of thing. They talk bad about other people in the company. When you start to see situations like that, it is just not a good situation. They may even talk down to you, they talk badly to you. I've seen bosses where they actually are verbally abusive to employees. I've actually seen bosses say things to employees like, this is the worst piece of this I've ever seen, where it actually is like blatant like that. Or, or it could be more passive aggressive than that, like, is this something that you just made up? Or is this something that you actually did? Or they actually feeling like the employee is a rival of them, where they're actually afraid that the employee might somehow look better than them in some way. They're concerned about that. So maybe they just don't want the employee to shine more than they do. That sometimes is a concern. They often lack empathy for the employee, which can be a problem. Like, I actually was in a situation one time where the boss had such lack of empathy for the employees. And this particular boss was a single mom herself at one point, but then by the time we got there, her kids had been grown. But one of the other employees was a single mom. She actually, told the single mom that, her kids should take an Uber or a cab to take themselves to doctor's appointments, that, she wasn't allowed to take time off. Like, she didn't really care that, her kids needed, if they were sick or anything like that. There was absolutely no empathy for that, completely insensitive to what was going on for this particular single mom. The bosses who are, if somebody's dog died or something, they might just be like, so what? Who cares? If there's a death in the family or something, they might just be like, you know, that we have to work. People can't just take time off. I've seen that before. They maybe they over exaggerate themselves, their accomplishments, their abilities. They actually might lie about themselves and their abilities. You might actually see them lie about their accomplishments and their abilities to clients, and that what they're saying is not true. That I've seen before as well, which is completely wrong. You might actually see them lie about numbers of what the company is doing, as far as how successful the company actually is. You might see that they don't have integrity around that. You might actually see them cheating clients, as far as cheating them out of money. That's something else that you might see a narcissistic boss doing. You might see them, taking advantage of people, taking advantage not just of clients, but taking advantage of other employees in the company as well, to get what they want. Lying to clients, lying to other people, lying to their spouses. You might see them telling their spouse that they're at work, and that they haven't been at work. You might see them being with other people, that that there's cheating on their spouse, and they might ask you to cover for them, which you might feel uncomfortable about. All of these things are just not okay. And if you agree with me, just put "not okay" in the comments, right? So, and you might see that the boss is just constantly bragging about his or her accomplishments, bragging about how great they are, bragging about all the things that they've done in the past, and getting you to constantly acknowledge how great they are, making sure that you know all of the amazing things that they've done, how smart they are, how brilliant they are. Also, if they make mistakes, if if they screw up, they blame you or they blame others. They don't ever take responsibility for that. That's a really uncomfortable situation to be in. You see them that they never say sorry. They never apologize, especially if they make you take responsibility for that. And they're blaming you and they're angry at you and they're yelling at you. And you know that it's not you. You know that it was them, but yet they're yelling at you for it. And they can even be verbally and emotionally abusive toward you, and that it was their screw up, and that often happens. So those are just some of the things that I have seen with narcissistic bosses, making people work ridiculous hours, making people stay late, demeaning people, making people who have very amazing skills, getting them coffee just to treat them poorly, just because they can, just to show them that they have control over them, just to demean them on purpose, just to degrade them on purpose, just to personally show them that they can publicly humiliate them on purpose, triangulate people, get somebody to be angry at somebody else because they want this person to be pitted against this person. They want to make sure that these two people never become friends because they don't want these two people to ever be friends with each other. They want them both to be beholden to them and them alone, So those are just some of the things. If you've seen any of these things, I'm sure that you are probably dealing with a narcissistic boss, and it's probably a highly toxic work environment and probably not one in which you want to stay very long. And one thing that I do want you to know is that I've been in situations like that, and it's not something that you can tolerate, but there are things that you can do in the short term, which is, you can say, I will not be disrespected as a human being, and you cannot speak to me in a way that's disrespectful. and yes, I work for you, but I will be treated in a way that's respectful. And if they don't want to treat you in a way that's respectful, you don't have to stay there. There are other situations out there. And you just need to start thinking about how you're going to manifest that. Just start writing out what your perfect job is going to be for you. Start deciding that you're manifesting that, and start thinking about where it is that you want to be and what that's going to look like for you, and start deciding where it is that you want to go. Here we go. Let's talk about what's going on beneath that narcissist, that hidden evil. They do seem so evil. And I'm telling you, some people feel like they're like gripped by the devil or whatever. And this is not a video about religion. I'm not going to get into religion. I'm not going to be talking about any of that. But they do seem like they're evil. They do seem like they're malicious. They do seem like they're after you. And the bottom line is that they are. They're after you, especially if you're in that discard phase, especially if you are in that final stage of the relationship. And what is going on underneath there? What's happening with that? And I've been on that other side of it. I know how you feel. Not only have I seen it many thousands of times as an attorney, and I've coached people through that situation, I've also felt it. I've been the target of it. So I've been in many different realms. And so sometimes that hidden evil isn't so hidden. It comes all the way out at you. They're hiding it from everybody else in the world, but you're seeing it directly, right? So, what is happening there? Why is this happening? And I know so often you sit there and you go, this isn't fair. This isn't right. I didn't do anything wrong. I was so good to this person. Believe me, I know. Believe me, I know. And believe me, I know because having been in a relationship, in relationships with narcissists, it's not equitable. You end up being the one doing so much more for them and giving so much more and being taken advantage of, because they do take advantage. They take advantage of your goodness, they take advantage of your soul, they take advantage of everything you're willing to do for them. You end up being their janitor, their caregiver, their everything for them, right? I mean, you'll do whatever it takes a lot of times. And a lot of times you think, how did I end up here? How did I end up being this person for this person? And eventually you think, well, they're going to see how good I am. They're going to see how much I've given them. And eventually they're going to acknowledge it and they're going to appreciate it. Well, they don't. And eventually you realize that. And eventually you just are so sucked dry and you're so raw and so traumatized, and you've got this complex post-traumatic stress disorder because it happens over and over and over again. And the difference between that and regular post-traumatic stress disorder, which happens as a result of maybe one thing that happened, which is like war or an accident or something, is that this happens over and over and over. It's a continuous thing that kept happening, is that it happens, and it's your health, and you can't think straight, and you've got brain fog. It eventually takes over your organs, and you have autoimmune problems and all sorts of things. So what's going on? Well, fundamentally, they have is their own sense of emptiness, their own sense of pain. They don't feel any sense of value inside of them. And hurt people hurt people. If they don't end up taking care of their own wounds, then they end up bleeding all over everybody else. And that's what happens. They end up bleeding all over everybody else. It just happens over and over and over again. You cannot help it. You cannot stop it. You cannot help them. You didn't cause it. You didn't control it. You can't cure it. The three C's. Those three C's were developed for Al-Anon, for people who are alcoholics or addicts, but it goes for narcissists too. Forget about trying to get them to see your side. Forget about trying to get them to acknowledge you. Forget about getting them to say they're sorry. It's not going to happen. So just move on. So I'm telling you, the word narcissist, it gets thrown around like candy. Here, narcissist for you, narcissist for everybody. But there are certain behaviors and personality traits that are definitely red flags for narcissism. So if you see any of these for someone, it's safe to say this person is probably a narcissist. So this is a person who they have to be the center of attention. A lot of people have to be the center of attention, but we're talking about a person who literally has to derive all of their value from external sources. They don't feel anything inside of them. Nothing. I'm not saying they don't have value. I'm saying they don't feel like they have any value inside. All human beings are inherently valuable. I'm talking about a person who doesn't feel like they have any value inside of them. All of their value is coming from outside of them. They feel totally and completely empty inside. That's what causes them to be very insecure, very, very insecure, because everything is coming from outside sources. Then everything is shifting constantly, right? If you're around them, you might want to help them feel valuable. You're pouring stuff into them all the time, but there's like a sieve in there. It's like a black hole. And so it's almost like they're starving, gasping for breath, desperate for air. They're in scarcity mode all the time. It can never be filled. It can never be filled. And so you're left feeling totally and completely starving. They're still empty inside. And it's this cycle that can never be broken. It can never be handled. All right. So that's what's going on all the way at the end of the spectrum. Yes, it's a spectrum, so at the end of the spectrum, you've got narcissistic personality disorder on one end. On the other end, you've got whoever you think your perfect human being is on the other end, the person who feels totally whole and complete and needs no outside, nothing to feel totally whole and complete. So, Dalai Lama or Jesus or whoever you think is a perfect human being. Okay. And then the rest of us who vacillate somewhere in between are in between. So they always have to be the center of attention. They're incredibly vain and obsessed with their appearance, and their self-worth is all based on external factors. And so because of that, they're very easily slighted. And, the minute they're slighted at all, they're extremely triggered, constantly triggered. You never know what's going to set them off, right? And that triggering is that narcissistic injury, which could cause narcissistic rage to come flying out. And so this is a person who also, coupled with all of this, has no empathy, literally no ability to have any empathy for anybody else. Because think about it, if all you're thinking about is survival all the time, then you can't think about anybody but yourself, because it's all you can see is you all the time. It's very difficult to see past yourself if all you can see is you. All right. And that's why they don't have any empathy for anybody else. Now, their self-worth is based on these external factors, but it's kind of a double thing going on. There's like this, which we call narcissistic supply. The supply sources can be what I call diamond level supply, which is how they look to the world. And that is impressive friends, amazing cars, houses, the best of everything, how they look on social media, the number of likes they're getting, how successful they are professionally, excessive admiration, adulation, all those things, their accomplishments. So they're constantly bragging about their accomplishments. Now, covert narcissists may not tend to brag about themselves as much. They might tend to be more of like the victim mentality. Oh, woe is me. But they're still every bit as much the narcissist. But they might tend to be a little bit more humble about it. They might tend to be more passive aggressive, and they might present themselves in the form of a humanitarian or something like that, but they're still every bit as much of a narcissist, okay? They still have an inflated sense of self importance. They still feel like they should have some kind of special treatment about them. Still very, very manipulative. All narcissists are extremely manipulative. They think that they have to manipulate in order to get what they want. They lie constantly. They stretch the truth. They withhold information. They withhold information about the truth. They withhold sex. They withhold resources. They withhold compliments. There's all sorts of things that they withhold, but they can be extremely charming when they want to be. They can love bomb you. They can future fake you. Oh, things are going to get better. You'll see, when they need to be. But everything is always a manipulation. So these are some of the signs that you've seen. Now, if any of you have seen any of these so far, give me a totally in the comments. Totally in the comments. All right. So these are signs that near certainty definitely guarantee somebody has narcissism. So if you've seen these, definitely stay away. Stay away. All right. So very egocentric. They think the world should revolve around them. Extremely sensitive to criticism, as I mentioned. They will definitely lash out if things don't go their way. They can go crazy over the smallest of things because, even if you use a certain tone that they find to be a slight, I always say narcissists hear tones like dogs hear whistles, like you didn't even use it to you. Nobody heard a tone. They heard tone. Very jealous of others, extremely jealous of others. Competitive. Everything's got to be a competition. Threatened by other people's success many times. Always have to be right, especially in social situations. You can't take away from them in a social situation at all, even the smallest of things in social situations, because, especially in front of people that they respect, that could be the worst possible thing that you could do. And, if things don't go their way, they can become defensive, angry, tantrums, even sometimes. Those are some of the things that you can see. And if you see some of these things, you definitely probably dealing with a narcissist, because normal, regular, reasonable, say non-narcissistic people, they don't tend to need this like this. You can just tell, you can feel it in your gut. I have people around me, they call it the spidey sense. You can feel it on the back of your head. You can feel it, the hair on the back of your neck stands up. You can definitely tell when it's happening, right? And I know for me, I could tell when I had a narcissistic business partner. I was, you see the signs, you start seeing things not adding up. You're like, some lies happening there, and projection, deflection, lying, denying, it's somebody else's fault, never their fault. You start to see things happening, and what happens is you start looking the other way. And if you start finding yourself making excuses for them, don't do that. When people show you who they are, believe them the first time. Don't make excuses for them. Get out of there. Go flying out of there like your hair's on fire. because it's not going to get better. Make sure you don't ignore these red flags of a narcissist. What's the first thing that you look for? This is a person who is probably the most charming, most charismatic, most incredible person that you have ever met on the planet. And they make you feel like you are the most special, amazing, incredible human being that they have ever met. The stars have aligned. Where have you been all of their lives? They call it love bombing, but it doesn't matter. It could be a business relationship too. I was in a business relationship with a narcissist, and I know you're over there thinking, wow, where has this person been all my life? Everything you like, they like. Everything that you can imagine, they can imagine. And you know why? Because they're mirroring you. They use these mirror neurons. And so they've been studying you. They've been looking at you, because narcissists know how to read people. They've been studying you. It is literally a survival technique that they've learned since childhood. They had trauma when they were children, and the only survival technique that they really know is how to read people and how to get what they want out of people. They know how to use people. So using people for their own gain, for their own opportunistic gain, is the one thing that they're really, really good at. Yes, their true colors show up later on, and it doesn't take that long, quite frankly. But at the beginning, you really feel like, wow, I mean, totally swept up off your feet and almost like you can't breathe, and if you try to see any of those red flags at the beginning, because they start to crop up fairly quickly, they shoot them down as quickly as they come up. They want you to only see those incredible, amazing things right away. Look at how much we have in common. Look at how the stars have aligned. I have all the perfect clients for you, or look at all these things that we have in common. We're just soulmates on every level. And then they want to get to that next level as quickly as possible, whatever it is. If they're in a business relationship with you, or even if it's a personal relationship, they're rushing you to that next level as fast as possible, because they want to lock you in as fast as possible, because they want to get to the point where they're taking withdrawals from the relationship. They're depositing at the beginning, but they want to take withdrawals as fast as possible. If it's moving in together, if it's meeting the family, if it's signing contracts, let's become business partners, let's, whatever it is, let's get to that next stage as fast as possible, because they want to start taking withdrawals as quickly as they possibly can. Where can we get to that next level as fast as possible? That's one of the red flags that you'll see, moving as quickly as possible to that next stage. And then as soon as you get to that next stage, you start to see those red flags. The stories don't add up. You see some lying, you see some projection, you see some denying. And this is where you start to see where they start to manipulate. You start to see the lying. You start to see where they're not so interested in you right away. You start to see ghosting, all of a sudden they're not responding to your text messages right away anymore. Now you're needy, very, very hypersensitive to criticism. Even if you might say something about that they came home late, or they don't want to have that for dinner, or whatever, every little thing is potentially a criticism. And then that could become a massive disagreement, a massive personal attack. And you might even find yourself defending them for yourself, because you've made this decision to be in this relationship with them. And if they come across as moody, or, they're late, or they're not doing things in a certain way, and other people are starting to see those true colors, if you find yourself kind of making excuses on their behalf, I want you to look at those red flags on your behalf, because, if you're starting to make excuses for them, well, they had a difficult childhood. Well, they're having a bad week. Well, they didn't have a good day. They didn't get you a birthday present or something, and everybody's sort of noticing they didn't get you a birthday present, and you're having to say, well, they didn't have much money. They had a bad month or whatever. And you're making excuses for them. I want you to really take note of that. Really think about what it is that you want in a relationship. They would say that they were going to do something and then didn't, or they would lie to a client, and what was going on with that, lying about money, and what's happening with that. If you feel like something underlying is going on, and something is off, like they're not really quite happy for you when they should be, and then you ask them about it. Well, I'm just, why are you pushing on this? I'm not feeling well. It's not that. It's, I just didn't have a good day. I just didn't hear you right. And they're always making excuses. You just can tell they're not really caring about you. And things just feel manipulative. They feel like they're jealous of you. And there's just this underlying current of something going on. Maybe you find out that they said something about you behind your back. And then when you ask them about it, they say, oh, that person was twisting my words. I didn't put it exactly that way. That's not how I said it. But that maybe something isn't quite right. Okay, so what is narcissist baiting? And this is part of an overall series of all sorts of 101. And I've helped many, many people over the years by helping them in my law practice, through my courses. And if you want a free way of helping yourself respond to emails, text messages, or just even write those difficult emails or text messages, or even talk to narcissists, I have a free tool for you. It's 15 key phrases for disarming narcissists. You can get that at disarmthenarc.com. So go ahead and grab that. So baiting is a technique that all narcissists use to provoke a reaction from their, I'm going to say, victims or targets. It is a way to get people reeled in. And what they want is that hit, that high. And, we call that narcissistic supply. It's a way of feeding their ego, feeding that need that they have to feel validated, to feed that black hole inside of them that makes them feel powerful, that makes them feel like they matter. They don't have any internal sense of value. So they get all of that need, that feeling of value, served from external sources. And baiting is one of those techniques that they use to serve that. So they provoke a reaction from people by doing things. So they'll send an email out there that they know is going to annoy you by saying something that they know is not true, or they know is going to be inflammatory, or they know is going to upset you, or they'll say things that they know is inflammatory. They purposely stir things up. And the goal of it is to get you to be angry, to get you to respond to them. And then they do it for a number of reasons. They do it because they think it's funny, because they enjoy seeing you upset. They get a high from it. But beyond that, it's even worse. They also use your reactions against you. So they'll say, look, there's the crazy person. There's the one who is delusional. There's the one who shouldn't have the children. There's the one who is psychotic, should be put away or whatever. They often are the ones who have the ability to stay calm and not react and look the part of the normal person. And oftentimes, if it's marriage counseling or something like that, they are able to sway the counselor into thinking that the other person is crazy, that they're the ones who are the calm, normal ones, or they can sway mediators into that, or they can sway judges into that. There was that mini series called I Care a Lot, where the guardian was able to get the aging people to look like they were the ones who were crazy and get them committed so that she could take their money, because she would whisper in their ear and make them look like they were crazy, on camera. That's baiting, like getting people riled up. They use all sorts of forms such as insults, name calling, threats, silent treatment. There's a number of different forms that they'll use. But the most important thing that you need to remember is if you find yourself getting baited, not to take that bait. Because, they're almost like fishing, and then they start reeling you in, and you're like with the fish with the hook in your mouth being pulled into it. And you don't want to be that, because the purpose of it is to evoke that reaction from you. And it can be dangerous. I say, when you're in a case with a narcissist, it's like being arrested. Anything you do or say will be used against you. And it makes them feel powerful, and it makes them feel in control. It can often lead to verbal abuse, physical abuse. It empowers them. It's very, very important for you to remain in control. And that's why I said, go get my 15 key phrases at disarmthenarc.com. Start with that. Try to communicate with them in a respectful way. Consider leaving the relationship if you need to, but don't allow them to take that control from you. Say, I'm in control. And I want you to put that in the comments right now. I'm in control. I'm in control, because I don't want you to allow them to take that control from you. I'm in control. So put that in the comments right now. I'm in control. Okay? Don't allow them that power. So let's talk about why a narcissist does that. Why do they constantly move the goalposts in negotiations? Well, first of all, I think it's important that you understand what's going on in the mind, the mentality of a narcissist, so that you can understand why they do that. So a narcissist feeds on what we call narcissistic supply. That's what's going on in the mind of a narcissist. They have no inner sense of self. They have to derive all of their value from the external world, and they do that in what we call a form of what we call narcissistic supply. And supply is basically anything that feeds their ego. And it's really not just an ego trip like for what would be great for most of us. All of us love to feel seen, heard, know that we matter. That's part of being a human. So I look at narcissism as kind of like on a continuum. We all want to feel seen, heard, and know that we matter. But most of us also can see that that's how other people want to feel as well. And so we feel love for them, we feel care for them, we feel compassion for them. Narcissists they live in this world of scarcity. It's like survival for them. If they feel like if they give anything or somebody else gets something, then that means they can't have it. That somehow that they're not going to survive, or the world is all going to come crashing down on them. And so
narcissistic supply has become their lifeblood, their oxygen, their food. It's what they need to live on. And when they're dealing with somebody in litigation, it just becomes 5 million times worse. I mean, they're exactly how they were during the relationship, but on steroids. And now when you're into that discard phase of the relationship, and if you want to know more about the discard phase, you should definitely check out my video on narcissistic discarding. But that's when you start to see the birth of the smear campaign. That's when they start to line up their flying monkeys and they start to go, you know, okay, I need to take this other person down before they take me down. And so I need to go on the offensive and go nuts on them. And they have an agenda, and that agenda is to take you down. And so right from the beginning, you are on a completely different path, a completely different mindset than the narcissist, because the reasonable person, reasonable person, will think, well, I don't want to spend a lot of money on lawyers. I don't want this to be a long, drawn-out process. What does the law say? Let me figure that out, and let me figure out what's fair under the law. And so you have this mistaken belief that that's where they are too, that they also want that. And they will even tell you that. You know, why are you being so unreasonable? Why can't you just settle this case? Why are you dragging this out? They'll project all of that out onto you. And you'll be sitting there thinking, but you're the one who's dragging it out. You're the one who filed all these extra pleadings. You're the one that falsely accused me of child abuse or you know, domestic violence or whatever it is. But they'll say that you're the one dragging it out. And the reason why they do that, it comes back to that concept of narcissistic supply. And that supply is what they get from dragging out the court's case or moving that goalpost on you, because they enjoy watching you squirm. They enjoy the process of seeing you grovel, of seeing you be afraid, of seeing you feel intimidated, of keeping you involved in the situation. I've had clients who were narcissists who said to me, I'd rather pay you than her or you than him, because they actually, I mean, why would they say that? Why would they say, I'd rather pay the attorney than the other person? Yes, on the surface, it looks like because they don't want the other person to have the money. But why? Why is that? It's probably because they enjoy watching the other person be hurt. They enjoy making you squirm. And so what will happen, what I mean when I say move the goalposts, is you will be trying to settle a case. And so your lawyer might send over a settlement proposal, and you're waiting for a settlement proposal back, and maybe you finally get one, and it's this counter offer, and it's way worse than what you sent over. And by the way, do not engage in this letter writing thing with lawyers if you're dealing with a narcissist. It's a waste of time, a waste of money, a big fat exercise, and it's feeding their need for supply. And so it's not anything that you want to engage in, because it's not going to get you anywhere. So, and by the way, if you are so ready to break free, I want to see a I'm ready in the comments. So what happens is you will be going back and forth with these letters, and maybe you finally get some sort of settlement proposal that you think, well, you know, it's not what I wanted. And you might even spend 3 days talking about it to everybody that you trust, you know, your mother or whoever, and your lawyer, and you spend 3 sleepless nights because you think, wait, it's way worse than what I wanted to settle for. but fine, I will go ahead and I will give into it. I will give them everything they wanted just because I want this thing to be done. I want it to be over with. I want to get on with my life. So you go back and you say, yes, fine, I'll take it. And your lawyer even says, well, this is way worse than you would do under the law. You wouldn't even do this, badly if you go to court, blah, blah, blah. You don't care. You just want out of it. I just want to be done. So you say, okay, guess what? That offer's no longer on the table anymore. Now it's something else. Now it's this plus this, or this minus that. And on top of that, it's your fault. It's your fault that they had to move the goalpost because you waited too long, you did something else within that 3-day period, or they found out something that you did or didn't do. They might have even contrived it. It's something completely made up. But because of that, now that's no longer the offer. Now if you want to take it, it's something else, something worse, of course, or something way more than what you're willing to give. And once again, you're in this position, but now you've locked yourself in because now they know that you have given in on this particular proposal. So anytime you try to go back and ask for more again, they're going to go, no, 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 no. They're going to want to hold you to whatever it was that you had agreed to. And then you try to say, well, no, I only agreed to that because I thought I was going to be done with this thing. But now that you've added all these other things, I'm not agreeing to that. So they want to hold you to the parts that they want to hold you to, but then they want more for them or less money that they have to pay you or whatever it is. So that's what I mean by moving the goalposts. And the reason why they do that is because they get narcissistic supply from doing that, from watching you squirm and keeping you involved in somehow and intimidating you. So that's why I created my SLAY program, because it stands for Super Strong Strategy, Creating Invincible Leverage, anticipating what the narcissist is going to do and being 2 steps ahead of them, and focusing on you, your position, and your case so that you can go actually on the offensive for a change and not constantly feel like you're on the defensive. And that's the only way that you will actually be able to shift this dynamic, the only way, because otherwise they will continue to move that goalpost. And I've had people say to me that their cases have taken years and years and years, or I've seen it myself when I've been litigating these cases. And, a lot of time people mistakenly think, all I need is a good lawyer. Just find me a good lawyer. That's the be all end all. That's the panacea. That's what I need. That's not the only thing that you need. A good lawyer needs to be just a portion of the strategy that you are creating. And that's why I created the SLAY program. There are many, many, many people who can tell you horror stories about how they found a great lawyer and 2 years later, 3 years later, 5 years later, here they are still litigating, and hundreds of thousands of dollars later, they're nowhere. And that's because they didn't learn properly how to create strategy and leverage in a way that's going to actually make the narcissist feel squeezed and motivated to actually want to resolve the case with you.